everyone. This is Matthew Brain here, and this book is a pile of garbage in my opinion. I hate this book. This is Ann Hood, the obituary writer. It has a lot of good reviews, but you know what? So does Twilight. I don't really know what to tell you. It's not that Twilight is the worst book of all time, but put it in perspective. So sometimes just because it's not even a feel-good book. It's like a chick flick that makes you feel bad just to feel bad. I don't really know where to put this category of the book is, but I'm gonna have spoilers in this. I'm gonna give a plot summary with this. So if you don't want the summary, don't watch this review. So just a heads up. But basically, it follows two people, Vivian and Claire. So Vivian, she's the obituary writer. So let's get that out the way. The person they're writing about is Vivian. They focus more on Vivian. She's the more interesting character. She's back in, I want to say, 1919 maybe. And Claire is the this is kind of a spoiler, so I'll say it in the video, but I'll say it a little bit later. So Claire, she's related to Vivian in a way you're not supposed to figure out to the end. And she's this housewife who is, in my opinion, extremely spoiled, and now she's unhappy with her life, and she wants to get a divorce, but divorce is not socially acceptable in her time period. So what does she do? She has an affair, because that's way more socially acceptable than getting a divorce, fucking somebody else in your husband's bed. Of course. So Claire, she's a airhead. They try to make her sound sympathetic and this personal thing that I believe women are supposed to relate to because of the time period. You know, women weren't allowed to do certain things because of the time period, but she's not a sympathetic character. You don't even, it's not just because of the affair. She's spoiled. She's too spoiled, and there's nothing really going on with her. She never says anything deep and intelligent, and the important parts that would have been character building for her are skipped over or barely touched. So for example, the reason she has an affair is a boy dies. Why? There's no point in having that in this book, but that's her reason for having an affair. A boy in her neighborhood dies, and I think she was the last person to see him. They never blame her. She's never part, but that's why she has an affair. Okay. And two, her husband doesn't listen to her very much. He's not very into her conversations, but in all fairness to the husband, she never really says anything of significance or importance. It's usually gossip, and I think everybody can relate to that, especially men. You know what I'm talking about. Women, sometimes they come home and they talk about crap about their whole day, and they talk about their job, and by the time they're done talking about their job 3 days in a row, you feel like you could go in there and do their job better than half the people who work there because you just know so much about it. I'll never forget when my ex worked at Panera Bread before I did, and she used to tell me so much about the paninis and what goes on the bread when she was complaining about this redhead girl she worked with. And for love of God, this went on for, I kid you not, I timed it one time. And she did this every time she came home. But one time I timed it. It was an hour and 20 minutes. She went on talking about a 10-minute section of her day. The hell with that. I mean, and they don't really show it off in the book like this, but you get the sympathy. She cheats on him because of that. And you're trying to feel for her, but you really don't. You really feel bad for Peter, her husband, because he's a really nice guy. I mean, throughout the whole book, this guy is a saint. She didn't talk to him about feeling like she wasn't heard. She didn't talk to him about feeling like she wanted to do things that were more spontaneous. She even does something so stupid, so she gets pregnant from this affair. And when she's done, she doesn't know so she's a Maury show victim. She doesn't know who the baby's daddy is, and back then. So, and once again, this is when Kennedy's in office, and she's obsessed with Jackie Kennedy. Why? Reasons. And because she's really a gossip hound. That's all her life centers around, is gossip. And she's like mad at her husband because his life doesn't center around gossip. So she even ends up getting the baby, I think she loses the baby because she goes on a sleigh ride or something like that, and she's driving recklessly. She just keeps doing really stupid, spontaneous stuff, jumping, making snow angels maybe, or jumping in the snow. It's just, she's resenting her husband because he's not being as angry at her as he should, and she doesn't want him to forgive her. She just kind of wants him to be the one to leave, but she also wants to make sure that she takes his daughter away from him. She's so vindictive over nothing. This guy hasn't done anything in there, and this woman, this Claire woman, she drives me crazy in this book. Then there's the second character, Vivian, the one who's from the past, the actual obituary writer. Now, she had an affair with a married man. I believe she was the other woman. Claire, the man she was messing around with, he was also married. So she's twice as guilty as Vivian was. Anyway, so Vivian, she was being spoiled by this married man, but she was independent in her own right. She didn't do it. It didn't seem really for money. She did it because she was in love with him, and she had this very watered down fantasy of falling in love with a man who spoke French. Why? I don't know. This is all the explanation they give for sleeping with these married people. Was it Anne Hood? Anne Hood explains Claire slept with the man because a kid died, and he listened. Later on, they say because he listened to her a little bit and looked at her a certain way, and it was spontaneous sex. She slept with a stranger, as far as I know, a stranger. And Vivian, she also did all this with a stranger. Why? Reasons. So Vivian, this guy she had an affair with, she's madly in love with him. He dies in this earthquake, but she doesn't know for sure. She's never found out real evidence because doesn't seem like she ever really looked, because when you finally get to the end of the book, I think it's been 10, 12, it's been a while, quite a while. After the man dies, she finds out with concrete evidence, maybe even 25 years later, she finds out with concrete evidence from the guy she knew, another guy she knew. Her old maid knew too. Everybody seemed to know but her. And the guy watched him die in front of him, like watched him. And I know this is a spoiler here, but hey, I'm warning you. He watched him die, so there's no reason she couldn't have just made a few phone calls to just double check, make sure he was dead. But no, she just wonders for years that he might still be alive. And Vivian is the more interesting of the characters because she's at least intelligent. Claire is an airhead. Vivian is smart. Vivian is very, very smart. She's the obituary writer. She knows all these poems, and she's a teacher, I believe, at the beginning of the book. Yeah, this book is just straight garbage. I couldn't tell you what the moral of the book was, if there was one. It does kind of live with Vivian, at least, kind of show like how you feel in stages when there's grief. But with Claire, I feel like she should be miserable. There's just no sympathy enough there to even care if she is grieving. Vivian, grief, understandable. Claire, you don't care. You almost feel like, yeah, you should. That's what you deserve. You just feel bad for Peter. Like I said, I get it. It's feminist literature, but as far as I'm concerned, the only character who even appeals, even as a feminist, is Vivian. Because if you were to tell me that Claire was going to make any strong decisions, and remember, Vivian lived before Claire. She's older, and it reveals in the end that Vivian is Claire's mother-in-law, and she gives her some last words that, hey, it's going to be okay. I mean, there's no huge, for the obituary writer who could give this huge spiel on how it's going to be okay and some wonderful wise wisdom, it's literally more like, no, don't worry, it'll be okay. I'm Vivian. Why? There was such a build up to nothing. These could have been I feel like these are two very short stories that got put into a big book that got very lucky by getting a lot of, how should I put it, press, because Anne Hood is very known for writing the Knitting Circle. And because she wrote the Knitting Circle, this book blew up and got a lot of reviews. That's the only reason I can think of this book is popular. Anyway, thanks for checking out my review. Sorry I didn't do a spoiler-free one. It's just I didn't like this book very much, and there wasn't enough to talk about to really give a spoiler-free one. All I could really say is Claire is selfish, self-obsessed. She's narcissistic, and Vivian, there's a little more to her, but there's not enough for me to take her as a really deep character. Not like when there's so many fantastic female characters in books out now, such as I can't remember, but I think they call it the Mother of Dragons from the Game of Thrones series is a very big person, or some of the people in some of the female characters in comic books now. They're even making Harley Quinn this huge, gigantic, giving her a lot more depth to her character that I personally don't like, but in comparison to this, I would even say, because my book, if you were to compare this book to a book that already exists, like to a very well-known comparative book, Scarlet Letter. Scarlet Letter is what this book is in a nutshell, but just done much better. It's done way better because at least in Scarlet Letter, she didn't have the choice of marrying or divorcing the man she had an affair with. She was very highly at a disadvantage. It showed her as a product of her times and the misfortunate treatment that she had being in that time. But this book right here, this book is stupid. It's just stupid.